before I say something about Gaza, just say a huge solidarity and thank you to JVL for all you've done over several years now, all the struggles you've faced and all the struggles that you've won, and that your ever presence at all the demonstrations on Palestine and for a decent, fair and good world is something that I really, really appreciate. And I want to say thank you very much, because I know how hard people work and the sacrifices that have been made to make that contribution. The Gaza demonstrations are enormous all around the world, and the rally we had last night in Tower Hamlets was superb. And Barnaby Raine and others spoke extremely well and talked about the history of struggle of the Jewish community in Tower Hamlets, going back a very, very long way, not just 1936, but well before that, to the arrival of people from Russia who were evading the anti-Semitic pogroms of the time, and the solidarity of different communities and the need for all communities to come together now in solidarity and support of the people of Palestine and of Gaza. And I think it's always important to state that message that all communities have to come together. And I've just come from a quite big meeting of the Caribbean Labour Solidarity Movement discussing exactly those kind of issues. Now, October the 7th was a horrible, awful day. A lot of people needlessly lost their lives in a totally horrendous attack, which has caused, obviously, incredible problems and misery for all of those families. The response of then going to bomb Gaza is a sort of retribution type idea. It has killed thousands and thousands of people. And when Antonio Guterres said this war didn't start from nowhere, and then pointed out to the issue of the occupation going back to 1948 onwards, and then the demands that were made for the humanitarian pause, which I did not support in Parliament, and I thought it was a wrong move by the Labour front bench. They should have quite clearly said all they wanted to support was a ceasefire in order to bring about a longer term process for peace. And they said, well, nobody's ever going to agree to that. Well, obviously, somebody agreed to some things. The humanitarian pause didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of an agreement hosted, I suspect, by the ICRC, the UN, Qatar, obviously, and probably Egypt and Turkey as well. The resumption of the bombing and the death of several hundred people already in the last couple of days, and the vision of more and more places being burnt to death, people being burnt to death, their property and homes destroyed, is absolutely appalling and disgusting. This time, there is a kind of parallel universe of political and media debate compared to what is happening in the normal communities. I hear in Parliament the most arcane sort of semi-legal, militaristic type discussion and debate about how the war is going, what's happening, how many bombs are being fallen, who's going to be killed, how many are going to be killed, what death rate can be tolerated. Cold, horrible, nasty calculations that seem to have no relationship to humanity or the lives of Palestinian people, or the levels of oppression that are being meted out against those in Israel who are speaking out against the occupation and against the war, as we've just heard. And then the parallel universe of the streets is extraordinary. I walk around my own community a lot, and I travel around the country a great deal. And I'll give you an example of this. I had, unfortunately, several hours on York Station on Friday night because the trains were all messed up because of some wires falling down somewhere. And so we had 2 or 3 hours waiting on the station in freezing conditions. No end of people who didn't know me just came up to me and started talking about how horrified they were about what's happening in Gaza, and how horrified they were, and how they wanted politicians to speak out much more bluntly and bravely on this issue. Sadly, most Labour MPs were completely missing on this issue, and just said, well, we'll vote for this pause and then the war can resume, without any thought of the consequence of this or the popular feeling against it. And so what do we do now? We keep on raising our voice, we keep on meeting, we keep on marching, we keep on demonstrating, and we keep up supporting the unions in Australia, in the United States, here and elsewhere, who are taking practical action to end the export of arms to Israel. And I hope that in this we have more and more success, and that in turn will force the pace on getting a ceasefire and force the pace on bringing about some kind of peace and justice for the Palestinian people. I'll finish on this. As Guterres said, Antonio Guterres said, it didn't come from nowhere. The siege of Gaza, the occupation of the West Bank, the settlement policy, the violence of the settlers towards the Palestinian farmers and people that are merely trying to survive on the West Bank is the major issue and the major factor. I would also say there's the unfinished business of the plight of refugees in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. They've been in those camps as long as I've been alive, and their lives are basically mainly second-class citizens in the society in which they live. And I think there has to be solidarity with them as well. We want people to be able to live together in peace. We want people to be able to understand and respect each other. I absolutely applaud and admire those human rights groups, left groups, and others in Israel that have consistently spoken out against the occupation and consistently spoken out about, in favor of cooperation with Palestine and the Palestinian people. This is a time when it's not easy to express our solidarity, but it's more important and more powerful than ever to do it now. And I thank JVL for the fantastic presence they've been on all the meetings, all the marches, and all the demonstrations. They've certainly boosted all of us by the bravery of yourselves. Thank you very much indeed.